Welcome to the Freshman Foundation Podcast, helping you make the jump from high school athletics to the collegiate level and beyond, with your host, Michael Huber.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mike Huber, founder and CEO of the Freshman Foundation. Welcome to the Freshman Foundation Podcast, a podcast geared toward how to prepare high school student athletes mentally and emotionally for the transition to college athletics. My guest today is Adam Boucher, a freshman pitcher at Duke University. Adam and I spent a lot of time together when I was on the baseball coaching staff at St. Joseph High School in Metuchen, New Jersey, where Adam played for 4 years on the varsity baseball team. Please welcome Adam to the podcast. Adam, good morning. How's it going, buddy?
Morning. It's going really well. I'm happy to join you guys and looking forward to what we are going to discuss.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I miss so for the listeners, Adam and I spent a lot of time together for 2 years and had a lot of conversations. And when Adam left for college, it was like having a kid leave for college, where they don't call or write anymore. They just go off and do their own thing. So I'm really happy to have him back in the house here in the Zoom room. So it's good to see him again face to face. So what's going on, man? How's school so far?
It's been good. A little bit of an adjustment period. I mean, obviously, Duke, they went away with a fall break schedule. They had us here from August until Thanksgiving, basically. Then we get an extended winter break, and then we go back in the spring for a long time. So been away for a while. We're going on, let's say, 3.5 months without going home. But, fitting in well, finding my niche. School's going well. Baseball's been a blast. It's been a good deal.
Good. How's the health situation there with COVID?
We're actually doing a really good job. We get tested twice a week. The athletes that are out of season get tested twice a week. The athletes that are in season get tested every day. And then non-athletes get tested twice a week as well. So they have some pretty good mitigation protocols here. The numbers are really down. There's really not much threat here. They almost consider it a bubble. They don't really want us leaving campus, going out and mingling with outsiders. So they do a really good job of containing here. Okay.
And how do you think that's affected your first semester of college? Have you been disappointed by it, or is it just has it been okay?
I mean, it's 2020 in a nutshell. We just hang out with the baseball team a lot. They have us in an apartment complex with a ton of other sports teams. So we see them out and about getting food, stuff like that. Obviously the social scene is affected. So the nightlife isn't what you think college is quite going to be, but still you meet new people just from daily interactions, stuff like that. You see people on the bus that you know. But yeah, I mean, you get to know the team a lot better just because we're by default, we're just grouped and we're in the same hallway in the apartment building. So yeah, we've had a lot of bonding time. I'll say that.
Cool. I mean, it must be nice to have the benefit of being with a team all the time, where you've always got people to spend time with. You're going to get to know them really well. I think that's probably the benefit, the upside of what's going on, even though maybe it's not the traditional kind of first semester college experience.
Right. And I mean, the sophomores have been super. It's us and the sophomores in the apartment complex. They've been super helpful. They've got us through this thing. So yeah, it's a good deal. Good.
All right. So let's talk about baseball. So for the audience who probably doesn't know who you are, can you just kind of tell us about your baseball background? You can kind of start wherever you want, but as a baseball player, tell me kind of how you got to where you are today.
So basically I've been a pitcher all my life. Fell in love with the sport when I was super young. I played Diamond Jacks travel ball out of Flemington, New Jersey. Played for St. Joseph High School under Mike Murray. Obviously, Coach Huber was on the staff there. I'm a right-handed pitcher, and my recruiting process. I was doing the travel circuit freshman, sophomore year. Got seen by a couple schools. Was lucky enough to get seen by Duke, and it was kind of a destination school for me. So when things materialized, I knew I wanted to come here, and so now I'm here, part of a 10-person freshman recruiting class, and working on it every day, trying to get better.
Right. So the recruiting process. So when were you offered, and when did you commit?
So I think I was offered maybe September of sophomore year. So like first day of school, sophomore year, maybe something like that.
Okay.
And then I committed I think I sat on it for a month and a half, maybe. I committed like 3 days before Thanksgiving, sophomore year. So yeah, that was pretty much the timeline there.
That's a good transition, right? So academically, in high school, like, tell me about it. You're a high academic achiever, right? St. Joe's is a really good school for those who don't know. Like, talk about that. Like, talk about how much emphasis you put into your academics as a high school athlete.
So at St. Joe's, I'm not going to lie, it wasn't terribly tough. You kind of knew what you were getting out of your teachers. You can hear from upperclassmen what the teachers are like. Everyone kind of has a similar schedule, and there's a comfort level that comes with it. So the classes weren't terribly hard. Obviously, you're going to have to study, you're going to have to prepare, you're going to have to work hard. But here, it's a different ball game. I'm actually the only baseball player in the engineering school right now. So it's been an adjustment curve. I'm taking math, engineering, chem, and writing. It's a pretty loaded slate. Right now I'm in a lot of introductory level classes, low in hundreds, but still they're much more challenging. I would say that the academics here are much more proactive than reactive. So in college, you're not waiting for the teacher to tell you have an assignment. It's due this time. You have the X amount of days to do it. They kind of expect you to check the stuff online and do it. And so your first 2 weeks of school, you can kind of get caught up in, I have an incomplete assignment that I didn't even know I had. So you have to be really proactive in terms of checking their websites, staying on top of your game. And really, it's doing stuff before you have to. That's going to get you where you want to be. In high school, I think everybody kind of leaves things until the last night before they're due, and you can get away with it. Here it's a little different because when you come home from lift at 8:30 p.m. and you just want to eat and go to bed, and you still have a paper or you have to do a problem set for math, you can get in some trouble there.
Yeah, it's definitely adjustment. I mean, if I think back to my time in college, I wasn't even an athlete, but I did work a significant amount my first year, and it was a huge adjustment, right? Because you're managing your time on your own. Wasn't much of a studier either, unfortunately, in high school. So you have to learn how to study efficiently, and you have to learn how to budget your time efficiently. And that, especially adding that baseball component to it, could be really, it sounds like it could be, really challenging. So if you had to kind of map out your week or just kind of guesstimate, like how many hours are you spending on baseball, which I'm sure you probably have a good handle on that, versus academics versus other?
Right. So on baseball, the NCAA mandated time limit is 20 hours. And I'll tell you, we run right to 20 hours and 0 minutes every week. And then we have strength and conditioning that doesn't count towards the time, or like quote unquote optional, but optional mandatory stuff that you have to do. And I'd say that's another hour for 6 days. So you're doing that for 6 hours, I'd say. So then that's 26 hours. And then my schedule is loaded on Monday, Wednesday, Friday for classes. So my classes on Monday, Wednesday, Friday probably take me about 4 or 5 hours. And then in terms of homework, I'd say it's another 10 hours a week, maybe. Yeah, I'd say 8 to 10 hours a week. It's just a lot, I would say. You're not used to having your schedule booked that much because everything has come a lot easier than that. In high school, you're doing 2-hour practices after school, and then you maybe have half an hour of homework every night, like just different ball game.
Yeah. So that's a great point, right? It's just much more intense, right? So I was thinking when you were saying that, like, has that changed your perspective on baseball at all because your schedule is so much more intense? Does it change the way you feel about baseball or no?
I will say for me personally, not really. I still love, the grind of it and going to the field every day. But just from what I've been hearing, it's very easy to fall out of love with it, especially if you're not performing well, if you have outside circumstances that are affecting you, and then you're just there at the field for 4 hours on a Tuesday night, and you're just really laboring through it. But we talk about being in the moment a lot here, and you just got to be where your feet are, and that's how they want us to, they want us to commit to every rep we take, just being in the moment, not thinking about external things, and just really locking in for the time that we're there, not worrying about the homework we have to do that night, not worrying about what's going on at home, stuff like that. But yeah, to get back to the question, I personally still love it, but there is other opinions on the team.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And especially like you said, you make a really good point, right? If you're not performing the way you want to, or if you're not, I mean, now you're in the fall, right? So it's not so much about playing time necessarily, but if you feel like maybe you're falling behind, or maybe you're going to be, down on the depth chart, motivation, it could be easy to lose motivation because you're like, why am I doing all this work and I'm not getting the return that I want?
Right. And that's a big thing because everybody comes to an ACC school and, they want to play baseball for a living. That's why they're here. And it can be very easy to be turned off if, all of a sudden it's not shaken out that way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's a long haul, marathon, not a sprint.
And so I love like some of those things that you just said, right? Like being in the moment, being where your feet are, commit to each rep, right? Like I had listened, we talked about this, not too long ago, I had listened to a podcast myself with Coach, Blake, who's your pitching coach there. And I was just so impressed with the way he talked about the process and the way they view the process there at Duke, the way he views the process as a coach. And I was able to draw a lot of connections between what he was saying and the work that you and I had the good fortune to do with you. Like, so can you talk about some of the things that maybe we worked on and how that's prepared you for what you're going through now?
Right. Probably I would say the biggest comparison, it's actually like a direct parallel, is they focus on, your pre-start process leading into your pre-pitch process. So they're very, very process oriented, as we stressed when we were working together. So it's just putting your body in a position and having cues so that your mental game is at its top, and so that you don't have to, you're almost on not autopilot, but you're not grinding your gears every time that you have to do something that is responding to stimulus. So no matter what, if you give up a hit, you're doing the same pre-pitch process. You're not rattled. And that's what they really, really focus on. And, they stress process in everything we do. Wake up at 8 a.m. and eat eggs. Whatever your process is, it needs to be consistent to something that works for you. And, it's almost a daily thing that they talk about. And they say, yeah, we know we sound repetitive, but in reality, like people that buy in, and I can see it in the upperclassmen, the people that have the best process are the ones that are performing. And it's really pretty interesting to see because, they're grown men doing the same thing every day. They come, and they get their early work in and they have their thing in the box that they do. And we were working on that a lot, and I thought I got a lot better at it. But it's even been harder to maintain that just because of the surroundings and the situation. Like, it's easy to have a process when everything's going well. It's really hard to have a process when, you're getting hit around a little bit.
Yeah. First of all, I mean, I'll selfishly say I love to hear that because I feel like that's something I really tried to kind of emphasize with all my athletes, but specifically with you. And I'll toot your horn a little bit because you're probably the smartest and most motivated kid that I've come across. And that's not to say that I've worked with thousands of kids, but like you just really wanted it badly. And, sometimes I don't think you actively resisted anything. You always were open to it. But I think now you're starting to understand the importance of that process, right? Because before it wasn't as important because you got by on ability, right? But like I'll think about the game because I'll talk about that game in the summer, right? Like when you're playing against a high caliber team, right? It's easy to get emotional, right? And then to go back to that process, right? And the things that you did yourself, right? Like I kind of guided you toward it, but the things that you did yourself to really ground yourself in those moments where maybe your emotions were getting the best of you, like now it's like, now they're making you do it all the time. They're on top of you every day. And there's a reason for that because you don't want to be overcome by the emotion because it's so many reps and so many pitches and there's so much failure in baseball. If you get sucked into the emotion of it, you're going to burn out. You're not going to be able to kind of sustain.
Exactly. And that's, it's a lot easier in high school when you're not mentally like locked in, you can still get by on some stuff. Like you can go into cruise control and still kind of rely on your ability. Here, you can't take a mental or physical rep off or you're going to get burned. And so that's really why they preach it because everyone here is good at baseball. It's what are we doing to separate ourselves? And they really, really preach mindfulness and, and just having your head on straight no matter what you're doing.
So what kinds of things are you doing from a mental skills perspective now there on campus, as a team, individually? I mean, you don't have to be specific or general as you want, but like, can you talk about that?
Yeah, we actually, they focus on it a lot here. So that we have the option to meet with a mental performance coach, and I'm doing that this semester. But in terms of the stuff that the entire team does, we have a mindfulness session once a week. Do that, and we talk about, like skills that we need to do, and it's staying in the moment, being able to step back and evaluate your performance without emotion, stuff like that. And then the freshmen specifically have a Zoom once a week. We actually just finished up last week, but we have a Zoom meeting that talks about our process building, so to speak. And we, last week we created what we want our perfect day to look like, and how we want that to look, and what we can do to make that a reality. You can tell that they believe in it so heavily because it works. And so it's, again, they sound very repetitive, but if you can buy in, then it's worth the time and the practice that you put in.
All right. So I love all that. And I think it's great. And I'm a believer, because I wouldn't be here if I didn't believe, but I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. So you don't have to answer the question, but you could kind of skirt it, or you could kind of pass if you want. But like you said, buy-in, right? That's something that's very big in the work that I do, because if an athlete doesn't trust me, right? If you don't trust me, then you're probably not going to listen to what I tell you, right? So what has the staff there done specifically for you to make you buy in?
Honestly, it's talking about, everybody wants to be the first round draft pick. And so they're talking about the kids that have had success, and they're talking about what they did in terms of mental performance and their process. And like, they're kind of saying, like, not one size doesn't fit all, but we're seeing a trend where all of these guys that are coming out did extensive work with this, and they're, being successful, they're making money playing baseball. And, we all want to do that. So it's like, you don't have to, you can go in and you can daydream for the hour that we're on the Zoom, but it's only going to hurt yourself in the long run. And again, I think it does come down to trust. Like, can you relate to the instructor and stuff like that? They just emphasize it so much that you realize over time, like, all right, they're not just saying it to say it. They actually believe that this is going to help us.
Yeah. I mean, listen, it's always good to have examples, right? To point to say, hey, these guys did this, what you're doing, and this is the result that they got. Not that it guarantees that you'll get there, but it gives you some hope that if you do the right things that they're telling you to do, that you might get to where you want to go as well. And a lot of that is just pure, am I motivated to do the work to get to where I want to go, right? And that's why the grind is so important. We talk about that so much. I mean, you talked about that, right? The grind, loving the process, because I want to get to a certain place. If I can't do that, it's going to be really hard to sustain.
Even there's apparently, I wasn't here to see last year, but some of the kids who have made the biggest jumps in this program are the ones that have committed to themselves and put in the time and effort, and their role on the team has drastically changed just because hard work pays off almost. And you invest in yourself, you create a process, you put in the work, and it pays off for them. And so it makes you want to work that much harder.
So I'm going to shift gears a little bit. So the first semester, fall ball, what's been the biggest challenge that you've faced? Anything, baseball-wise, academically, what's been the biggest change or challenge in your transition from leaving home and moving to college, going to Duke?
Honestly, I would say it's baseball-wise, because, my mom may not want to hear this, but, I feel like I'm here to play baseball. And, you're playing a different game here than you are in high school. Everyone's so much better. You're not going to, it's unrealistic to expect the success that you're going to have that you've had your entire life here. And so you kind of have to go about complete mental change. Obviously, I still have very high expectations for myself, but almost the style of the game has changed on me. And so that, I would say, is the biggest adjustment. Baseball is just a lot harder. You see everybody else doing well, or the upperclassmen doing well. You see some other people doing well. And even, sometimes you have success, and it reminds you of high school, but you realize that like these kids are really good. How can I do this consistently and stuff and not becoming impatient, but like wanting to make jumps so fast. But in reality, it's a maturation process.
Yeah. You used the word style. Like what's different about the style of baseball at Duke versus St. Joe's?
Well, I was just talking about it with my pitching coach. Like, I can rely on 1.5 pitches in high school and get by with it. Here, the hitters are just so much more advanced, and they handle good stuff a lot easier. So it's just a nuance of pitching that I really have to focus on. Becoming a pitcher instead of a thrower almost, and that takes time. There's a lot that goes into it. So the pitching style definitely changed, and also just the culture, the atmosphere. I'm coming into a very intense, motivated group. Is a part of the reason that I picked Duke. I think I'll thrive in this situation. And, it's just every day you got to come to grind, or you're going to lose spots in the depth chart. Everybody's wanted a piece of the pie, and everybody was the alpha dog where they come from. So when you're no longer that, everything kind of switches up on you.
Yeah, it's a big phrase I use is, you would go from being a big fish in a small pond to a small fish in a big pond, right? And that's in a lot of ways that's true, right? Because everybody's just as good. And I think recognizing that, right? Like having the awareness to know that, maybe you're just not as, special as you thought you were. I think that the sooner you can kind of get to that point, maybe the better off you are.
Right. And there's that, but then there's the fine line of realizing if I can do everything in my power to get to the position where I was in high school, where I'm that top dog, that'll keep you hungry and keep you working.
Well, it's like, it's just like high school, right? In some ways, right? You used the word impatience, but the word patience comes to mind, right? You come in as a freshman in high school and you're not the player you're going to be when you're a junior or a senior. It's the same thing, right? You come in as a freshman and sure you want to compete, sure you want to contribute, but the learning curve, the process, like what you're getting out of that first year is, it's invaluable, right? And so if you can play the long game and be patient and say like, hey, I've got 4 more years of improvement, like where can I get to, right? How good can I be?
Yeah. I mean, obviously the goal is to come in and pitch and make an impact day one, but also on the contrary, I think it was the Louisville head coach who was talking in an interview. But he also said, if your freshman year of baseball in college is your best year of your career, you didn't have a very good career. So you have to recognize that, yes, like, absolutely, I want to pitch on Friday as a freshman. Like, who doesn't? Like, that'd be great. But at the same point in time, you have to realize it's process. It's a marathon.
Yeah, I know that you've got that mindset, I mean, I'm sure that you have your days, but I think, you're somebody who has a vision for the future. And I think that that's from a motivational standpoint, that vision will help to sustain, the day-to-day work, the grind. So if I'm going to ask you tell me one moment like this fall, like in fall ball, maybe in a practice or inter squad, where you said to yourself, like, oh, wow, like, both good and bad, like, oh, wow, like, I belong here. And oh, wow, like, wow, these guys are really good. Like, do you have things like moments that stand out like that?
Well, it was my first sim game. I think it was like the second batter. This is harder moment was I threw a fastball to an outfielder on our team, and, he pretty much turned on it and hit it into the freaking trees. And I was like, okay, like this is not normal. And so that was an oh wow wake up moment. It was another oh wow wake up moment. I've been throwing pretty good fastballs this fall, and first pitch of the game, another outfielder on our team hits it over the center field fence. I'm like, wow, first pitch, okay. And so, but then again, you have the oh wow, like maybe I'm good enough to do this moments where, like, I don't know, you go in like I've had a couple 1-inning outings where you work on something all week, like improving the shape of your slider, and then you can do it in game and you get swings and misses on it. And it's kind of like, it's very validating to see you work on stuff, and, obviously seeing success is very satisfying. So you say like, yeah, like I can do this. It's just a matter of, can I do it consistently?
Yeah. There's a theory in sports psychology or in psychology in general called self-efficacy theory, which basically kind of says like the number one source of self-confidence in a particular skill, right? Throwing a slider, throwing a fastball, being a pitcher is actually having successful performance, right? Like, so when you see that you could do something once or twice or three times, like, you know, it's possible, right? So you might not get the result every time, but you could look back to that moment and say like, hey, I did it. Now, I'm really curious about what you said about that, right? Like, so will you go into a week of practice and set a specific goal and a plan, a program to work on like one skill or one thing?
We do. So we have these things called after action reports. So after every outing, they want us to sit down the morning after. So it's not, or we don't do it with a ton of emotion on our mind. And we fill out what went good, what went bad, and what am I going to do this week to grow on stuff. And so that kind of sets the tone for your throwing, your lifting for the entire week. And it's been helpful for me because when you sit down and you watch a video after the fact, you know, everything could seem better or worse like 10 minutes after you throw, and you could be like, yeah, I had a great outing, I had a terrible outing. But when you sit down and watch it the morning after, you had a night's sleep on it, and you look at it and you're saying, oh, this is what I need to do, this is what I did, and this is what I'm going to do in the future. It gives you a really good plan. That's how I've seen a lot of the growth that I've made this fall is, you know, identifying things that I want to work on and doing it.
I think that's great, right? And that takes patience and persistence, right? Because those skills, those repetitions are so nuanced and it may even become monotonous, right? Like, you know, you're working on the same thing over and over and again, and it can get frustrating if you're not getting the results that you want, right? Like, how do you kind of keep that in perspective to say, like, if I can keep working through this and get better, it's going to help me be a better player in the long term. And that's, you know, especially again, to kind of go back to that idea, right? When you're in high school, you can make mistakes as a pitcher or even as a hitter and still get the results that you want because the physical tools are so much greater than the competition around you a lot of times. Now, those mistakes become magnified because everybody else is really good. And that's kind of that element of dealing with failure. Baseball, you know, I'll argue it to the cows come home. Baseball is the game when it comes to that, in terms of really humbling a player who, you know, thinks they're good, and you make a mistake and you get beaten. You're like, holy cow, like, how did that happen?
You know, I had a talk with my coach. I got roughed up a little bit one outing, and he was just saying, you know, mental toughness is huge because you're no longer at Lake Point where everybody's, you know, intimidated by you because you're the biggest kid. You know, you're facing grown men now. And that was just kind of the essence of that. And I actually, you know, think about that pretty often.
All right, so I'm going to change directions again on you. So I'm curious, I wasn't planning to ask this, but it came up in my mind. How are your parents dealing with you being away with the transition?
I mean, I talk to my mom pretty often. Moms can talk. So
yes, they can.
So when we get on the phone, I expect I'm watching that Netflix. I pause it and I expect a 4-minute conversation. It turns to 40. So I'm pretty in the loop with them. I mean, I miss my dogs a lot, but yeah, the parents are good. Me and my dad talk baseball. We talk sports, stuff like that. I'm actually in more contact with my siblings now. Never would have thought that. So that's good. But yeah, we've been away for a long time. And so, of course, we have our last day of baseball is slated to be Wednesday. So kids are leaving Friday, Saturday, you know, the 13th to the 14th. But I have a in-person final on the 23rd, so I don't go home for like another 2 weeks, which is like, oh, but yeah, it's kind of like you're here for so long, and then you're kind of like, yeah, I'm ready to go home. But now everybody's leaving. You're like, wait, I don't want to leave. Like, yeah.
I remember it like it was yesterday. It was a long time ago when that first time I went home for Thanksgiving, that my freshman year, and got on the plane, and it was like, I felt like I'd been away for years. You know, I was so excited to go home. And I think that's when things normalize a little bit. You go home, see everything's the same. You see your friends, you see your family, and it's okay. Like, now I can go back, you know, after winter break and be like, all right, this is normal now. You know, it's that first semester is really hard for anybody, you know, and you've been busting your butt playing baseball, trying to kind of fit in and get better. So it's a credit to you. I'm going to try to move things and wrap up here a little bit. You know, we're getting close to, you know, kind of where we want to be time wise. So I'm curious, like, if what would you suggest, or what would you say to any high school athlete who's going to make this jump? Like, what would you say is like, are the things that they should be thinking about in their preparation?
I would say I am a huge proponent for the work we did. It helped me. I fall back on it a lot. And just even like, not like just baseball wise, day to day, we talked about life a lot. And that was, I got some invaluable lessons there. After that, I would say really need to evaluate the holes in your game because they will get exploited. So if you are someone who doesn't handle adversity well, that's something you really need to focus on. If you're someone who thinks they're going to have academic problems in college, you most likely will. And so get better study habits. I would say that your strengths probably will continue to be your strengths. If you're really good in the classroom, you're still probably going to do well in the classroom because everybody has their priorities. But just get ready to come into an atmosphere where everybody's always been the best of the best. And it's going to be fun because you're with a lot of like-minded people. But at the same time, you can kind of desire high school a little bit. So just get ready to evolve in all aspects. You have to be willing to change, or you're going to get left in the dust.
You raise a really good point, right? Like what you've described as being aware of what your strengths and weaknesses are. And I think, forget about being an athlete or a baseball player. I think that that's something that a lot of people, any person, has a hard time doing sometimes because they don't want to look at the things that they need to get better at. Do you has there been a time in the last few months since you've been there where you've maybe kind of taken issue with the criticism, or you've taken it personally from a coach, or tell me about that? Because I think that that's something that could really be a challenge for somebody who's not used to getting a lot of, critical feedback. And then all of a sudden you're getting kind of picked apart. Like, can you talk about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with ego. Like everyone has an ego, whether they realize it or not. And so when you're humbled by your performance and then your coaches add on by that, by, getting on you, it can get at you a little bit. And you can be down for a little bit. And so it can eat at you a little bit just because it's completely different environment. And you'll realize that when they get on you about things and they're seeing a trend of inconsistencies in your game, they're doing it to make you better. It's really hard to see because it's after you come out of the game and you give up, I don't know, say you give up a grand slam and then they chew you out. You can see that you're filled with emotion at that point in time. So it can, get in your head, but, you sleep on it for 2 days and you realize, oh, they're not doing it because they want to pick on me. They're doing it because they see, potential and, where they want me to be, and they have expectations for me. So it's kind of letting go of the ego because, things that you've done in the past might necessarily not work, and you could be stubborn in your ways. I've been stubborn, but it's buying into what they're saying and, just being willing to change, willing to hear them out rather than going in shutdown mode.
Yeah. It's not an easy thing to do. And I, as a mental performance coach, that's why I advocate for try to get athletes to kind of shift to a growth mindset, right? Where, and that takes practice. That's not natural for a lot of people. A lot of people are very ego oriented, like you said, right? Where if they don't get the results they want, or they don't get the feedback that they want, they shut down, right? Rather than looking at that and saying, hey, this is going to help me. I can take and learn from it, right? And a lot of that, listen, from a coaching perspective, right? There are obviously a lot of different coaching styles out there. There are a lot of different ways to communicate the messages. A message. Sometimes the coaches are complicit in that because of the way they communicate. So again, being general if you want, but tell me about, because this is something that intrigues me because I've never played at the college level, but tell me about that, the communication with your coaches. What does that look like?
They're incredibly honest with us. They hold us accountable when we, they're not going to undress us in front of the team, but when we screw up, they let us know. And, they don't get mad at, physical errors, stuff like that. Everyone's going to throw balls to the backstop. What really will get you in trouble is if it becomes a recurring trend and you're not making adjustments. That's where they take issue. You need to be able to make adjustments. That's what they do. Their coaching style, again, to get really good results and see change, you need to be honest. They believe in being honest with us. And so, maybe it takes a little kick in the ass for somebody to really get motivated and start working on their game. They're pretty good with, everybody responds to different types of coaching. And, I personally like a very intense culture. I mean, my parents are pretty intense. So like I come from, I've experienced that, but yeah, they realize how to communicate their message, but at the same point in time, they're very honest, and they do weekly checkups. They say, this is what we're seeing. What are you seeing? How can we get better?
Listen, I love it. I mean, and from what I know, the little that I know from the outside looking in about the staff there, because I have paid closer attention since now that you're there, I kind of follow along social media a little bit, and I try to understand. And my sense is that they have a really good handle on how to deal with players on a case-by-case basis, which I think really makes for really positive coaching, because not everybody's the same. Everybody has different experiences in the past. Everybody has a different mindset. Some people are more growth mindset oriented, where they could kind of just take it and go with the flow. Some people take things really hard, and sometimes you need a kick in the ass, and sometimes you need a pat on the back. And being able to recognize that's really important. And the fact that you're able to get that feedback in a way that you can transform it to be constructive or take it to be constructive that's what it's about, right? Their job is to make you better. Their job is to get you to the next level, right? Like to win games, to get better, and to get to the next level. And I think if you keep that in perspective, then, the criticisms then kind of fall into place, versus the criticism being personal, which it almost never is. It's not about you as a person. It's about, how do I get you to be a better player?
Exactly. That's exactly right.
So if I had to ask you, I kind of asked you, like, what would you suggest to, high school athletes who are coming up? But if you had to say or pick one thing that you think is like the most important thing for a high school baseball player or any high school athlete going and preparing to go to college, like, what would you say the most important thing to work on is?
Let's see. That's a tough question. I would say your ability to not live and die by your performance.
Great answer. Right. And so I'll sort of, I'll do my typical shtick. The reason why I think that that's a really important answer is because your performance, some of it's not in your control, right? You could go out there and be committed to the process. You could throw your best stuff, but the person in the box, you don't have any control over that. They just might be better that moment, right? That day. And being able to kind of let that go and move on and learn from it is what makes a better player. If you get bogged down in that result that is largely out of your control in some ways, then, you're never going to get to where you want to go, because every time you have one of those hiccups, it's just going to set you back. I think it's great. And so, I think it's, to wrap it up on that, like what you just said, what did you do? What do you do, or what have you done to get better at letting that performance result element go?
You have to find outlets, I'd say, because, at any given day, there's going to be, 20 of us come back to the hallway. 5 of us are going to be pumped about how we played. 10 of us are going to be like, okay, played all right, or I didn't pitch today, and then 5 of us are going to have a terrible day, and we're going to be like, oh my God, I just need a break. But you have to be able to come home, take a shower. Obviously, everybody's going to be bummed for 2 hours, 3 hours after, but you need to be able to, go play golf, go to the driving range, go fish. Because even the projected first rounders in our program have bad days. They strike out, they get hit, but then they come back stronger than everybody else. So I would say, if you make baseball your life, you're going to be miserable. You have to, obviously, you need to get your throwing in, you need to get your workout in every day. But if you are just focused on, should have done this, can't get my last step out of my head, it's going to create baggage on your mind that you just can't handle.
Great. So I'll say thank you for taking the time to talk to me. It's great to see you. It's great to catch up with you and hear what's going on. And I think, you share a lot of really valuable personal stuff that I think will help other people, which is really the intention. So again, I thank you. And I hope that we could do this again in the spring. If everything's in a decent place, let's try to catch up again and do part 2.
Absolutely. I'm really pumped to be here. I thought we had some good talking points. I'm happy that we got to catch up. So thank you.
Big time. Well, enjoy. Good luck the rest of the semester, and have a safe trip home.
Will do. Thank you.
Mike Huber is the founder and owner of Follow the Ball Coaching, located in Fairhaven, New Jersey. He is a mental performance coach and business advisor dedicated to serving athletes just like you reach their full potential on and off the court. The Freshman Foundation is all about helping you get to the next level. For more information, follow along on Instagram at the Freshman Foundation. Please subscribe, give us a like on iTunes, Spotify, leave a review, tell a friend. Most importantly, come back in 2 weeks, ready to get better.